Oh no, yep, now it's recording.
Amazing. Okay, shall I get started? Hey everyone, my name's Matt Abrams. Welcome to the community call. I am the first community support engineer at Grafana, and I'm going to be moderating the talk today, and we are going to be just running through, trying something out. We're calling it Community Matters. Sorry, I'm getting a lot of messages right now. Doing a thing called Community Matters, where first we're going to have a little presentation from one of my teammates about some of the new projects that the community team is working on to help support the community. And then after that, we're going to open it up to this kind of like free session where we're going to work through some of the things. I'm going to talk about some of the things that I'm interested in learning from the community, and you can hopefully give me some feedback on all of that. So I think that's all you need to hear about me. Diana is going to give a presentation really quickly. Diana Payton is a senior technical writer from the Doc Squad on the Grafana team, and she's going to be talking about very briefly about the new Docs homepage and I believe exporters as well. So Diana?
Hi there, and I am actually the technical documentation lead now, as of a month or two ago. So, you know, things change quickly around here in startup land. Pleased to see you all. And let me present my screen. All right, can you guys see my screen?
Yes, I can.
All right, so this is the brand new Docs homepage, and top it doesn't look that different except for this lovely search bar, which I'll demo for you in just a moment. But down here, we used to have kind of an odd thing where there was an icon and then a title, and the whole thing was not clickable. And now you can click everything. Also, instead of being organized in products and projects, they're all kind of in one bucket because we've got some kind of quick find things quickly, popular content up here, and then down here is all of our various doc sets. And there will be more small tweaks coming soon, but that's kind of a big improvement, at least from our perspective. And last community call, I demoed the new site-wide search bar, which you can access anywhere by clicking this little guy right here. But if you do a search in here, let's say, install Grafana with Docker. Then you will get a search already filtered for just docs. So that's just a nice little usability thing there. So that's pretty cool. And as mentioned, exporters are now live. You got people who showed up to the last community call or watched the last one had a little preview of just one exporter, but now the Prometheus Exporter Quick Starts page is live with 7 exporters currently up, and I believe more to come. And if you want to know about the various exporters available for Prometheus, just go here and you can find out all sorts of useful nitty-gritty information about using exporters and how to integrate them into your Grafana Cloud account, because that's how we roll. All right, that's about what I had.
Diana, that's really, really fantastic and super cool to see all of the exporter quick starts.
A hat tip to Matthew Helmke, who's been working really hard on this with the cloud team. And so all credit to him. I'm just showing off his hard work because he couldn't make it to this call.
Yeah, it's really incredible, and it's actually thank you for all of that. And I think it makes like a really nice bridge into what I was hoping to kind of like kick off this community call to talk about. a matter that's of particular interest to me, and I'm hoping that the community, all the community members on this call, can help me with this. I'm new to Grafana myself. Today is actually my 1-month anniversary with the community, and before joining Grafana, I had never really. My former company used Grafana, and we all loved Grafana, but I had never really used Grafana seriously, and so I'm still very much learning. And I find myself in this position of being like a very avid and enthusiastic and ambitious, but very early stage Grafana learner. And, and I find myself like trying to find answers to questions like we all do when we're trying to stand something up or make something work. And I'm very curious to hear from the community, like, how are you learning Grafana? Like, what does it mean when you're learning Grafana? When you were trying to figure out Grafana, or whatever you're trying to figure out now, what does that kind of workflow look like for you? Like, where are you going? Are there resources you like? What are you trying to learn? I'm very curious to hear what I can learn from you about how you're using resources in like the broad Grafana ecosystem. So I'm curious if anybody on the team or anybody on the call has any input or feedback about that. I'm really curious to hear more.
Just to toss things out there, we have tutorials. Oh, and I see I apologize if I slaughter this. Yeah, Zhu Zhang. Sorry, man, I took German in high school, not an Asian language.
Yeah, so this is Shu from LinkedIn. So I pretty much learned the Grafana through docs. I think 80% of my time is spent on the docs. And,
nice.
And the rest 20% is just Googling and also ask questions in the Slack channel.
Do you ever use like the Grafana community platform, the discourse channel that we have for?
No, only the Slack one.
Slack's great. I think Slack is great, and I think the community discourse is maybe.
So you're saying Grafana officially has two set of community. One is Slack, one is Discord. Is that right?
Yes.
And
so
and you're promoting using Discord right now, right?
The discourse, but the discourse is the back end of our community forums, and the reason we're trying to get people to use the forums is because, unlike Slack, the forum answers will stick around and be searchable.
Oh, okay.
Like, so if somebody has a question that they ask and get answered, somebody else in 2 months down the line has the same question and does a Google search for it, then they'll be more likely to find the answer.
Okay.
And in our forums, because there's no hope in the Slack. It doesn't remember things for very long.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, I think it's community.grafana.com, and I've found it. It's actually a very powerful resource for finding answers to stuff, because chances are, if you have a question, it's probably been asked in there before. That's kind of the thing that I'm discovering for a lot of stuff. There's a lot of like institutional knowledge buried in that discourse channel. So it can be, and people are pretty good about answering right now. So it can be a good place to get feedback, I think, for like a longer discussion. But that's interesting. Yeah, I like our docs too. I was actually thinking I should just sit down and read the docs. Like I really just like read them all from top to bottom. That would be really important for me to do.
RTFM, man. There's a question in the chat as well. Maybe export the Slack as a stream that's searchable. That sounds. It's an intriguing idea, but how would that even work?
People can just search directly in the Slack.
You can, but since we're not paying customers of Slack, that we don't have history. So after a while, old messages will just disappear into thin air, unfortunately.
Well, it's even worse. They store everything and then they just force you to pay if you want to get into the history, and it's explicitly forbidden in their contract terms or in their service terms to extract any messages out of Slack, in particular with the non-paid version, which is one of the reasons why I don't like Slack too much. But like in theory, we can do it, but in practice, if Slack notices, they will just shut everything down or that bot down or what have you. So.
So can I ask, Zhu, you mentioned like 80% from the documentation and 20% from Slack. Is that the same ratio now than compared to when you first started learning Grafana, or has that changed?
Yeah, I just started using Grafana like for 4 months. So
oh, okay.
I have a long history to compare.
Yeah, just curious if you had like if you learned Grafana years ago and then do you come back to the documentation, or do you go to places like Slack or Discord more? But yeah, documentation seems you seem to have a lot more to gain from the documentation. It sounds like.
Yes.
Anybody else have any input of how they're learning Grafana or favorite resources that they like? Or we can. I also have some related questions. Like I saw somebody actually before the meeting made some notes in this doc, because some of the other questions that I had, related to how you're learning Grafana, and Shu, this is maybe something you might want to chime in on, is, how are you using Grafana? I think there's like the common Grafana use case, but it feels like a lot of the people that I'm interacting with in the forums and who are playing with Grafana are really pushing its limits or using it in like unorthodox ways or interesting ways or innovative ways. So I'm always curious to like learn more about how people are actually using Grafana in the wild. So if anybody'd like to share their experience on that. Shu, what's up?
Yeah, so I'm kind of using the Grafana in untraditional way, the sense for the UI kit that introduced since maybe 6.0. So I'm working on a internal tools where we originally built the UI on top of the Ember, and we have some internal UI libraries based on the Ember, but to be honest, the Ember has a really steep learning curve for people like don't have any or much UI experience, and on the other hand, the React is more like friendly. Like people can pick up the UI development really fast using the React, and so we kind of, for one of our internal tools, we decided to just get rid of the Ember and and then use the Grafana to show our data. And of course, we're gonna use the like the most of the built-in visualizations from Grafana, but for other like other UI that needs the like user to that does more complicated stuff, we're gonna just use the React UI kit to build one. And overall, I think it's really awesome because I can share a comparison. So for the Ember version of our old version, we kind of spent. So we are like a 4 people team, and one of us like is like UI guy, and we spend like a year to maintain that a single page. And once we switched to Grafana, we only like spent 10 days to implement all the like pretty much has the feature parity there. So there is a boost, like productivity boost.
So that's really fascinating. So you're sharing your Grafana UI internally. It's replaced an entire internal tool that you were using. Is that what I understand?
Sorry, can you repeat?
No, I was just trying to get a
So
trying
okay,
to.
yeah. So within LinkedIn, there are like tons of like hundreds of like tooling, right? So
Mhm,
individual project, and I'm working on one of them. And originally
mhm,
it's built on top of Ember, and
mhm.
then now it's built on top of Grafana. And so not everyone is using the Grafana right now,
Right,
and I'm trying to promoting it and using my case as a successful story. And yeah.
because it's removed a lot of friction from what you were doing before, or
Yes, right.
it's lowered the bar to entry too, because it sounds like it's
Yes,
just easier.
yes.
That's fantastic. Is there anything that you wish that Grafana could do more for you in this kind of non-normative way that you're using it?
Uh, I would say more doc on the UI kit. I know it's new, and when I see the UI kit doc, it's kind of it's not as rich as the like Grafana doc. I think we just need more examples and documentation on the UI kit. That would be really helpful. But I understand it's new. You guys need more time to.
So, can I just ask, when you refer to UI kit, are you referring to the plugins documentation? Since you mentioned React.
Yes, you know you have a like yes, the plugins, the UI kit to build the panel plugins.
Yeah. So are you referring to the developers.grafana?
You know there is a storybook, right?
Yeah, exactly. So
That
that's the one.
one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. On the subject of examples in general, some of the feedback we get about the documentation is that people would like more examples. And the tough part about that for me as a writer is I'm not an expert in most of the Grafana usages, and I don't have a whole lot of real world examples. So if you guys are looking through or you have good examples, all of our open source documentation has an edit this page button. So we'd love to have community contributions of examples of things.
It's not like a more complicated example. It's like for some, I remember for some controls or component, like it doesn't have like the basic like examples, like just to like I think there's a key and knobs on the storybook, and some of them doesn't even work, I guess. So
Yeah,
yeah.
so the best place to put feedback for Storybook is in the hashtag Grafana Fails channel in the public Slack. I did not name that channel. The UX folk did, and they monitor that channel quite fairly closely. So if you want to give them feedback about that, that's the place to put it. So
Okay. So
yeah, they own the Storybook and manage that, but we'll help them as best we can. But telling us what your pain points are there and what would help you would really help us to help them to help you.
okay, got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Diana, and it kind of brings me to this other bullet that somebody before the meeting had made some contributions to the notes in the docs, and one of the things about using Grafana, like what did they want to see? What kind of content would you like to have? And they wrote something about performance tuning, a performance tuning guide, or configuration recipes, recipes for scaling out, which made me kind of think about a lot of things that could maybe be useful for the community. I'm not sure what this person was thinking about, like some sort of like kind of cookbook type format, or if the community is interested, kind of like maybe what Chu was talking about, like quick starts or tutorials. I think the quick starts for the exporters are like going to be super fantastic. I'm really excited to poke around in all of those, actually. So is that the kind of content that we should have more of? I think I can't say for sure. I mean, I would love it, but I just mean that. So, like what would you like to see? I mean, I'm very curious. And especially like in this performance tuning, they could have we could have a whole community call about that, I'm sure, and what that could entail. But yeah, as far as like content, I think the quick start and the tutorial or a glossary, things like that are all very interesting things. So anybody have any feedback on that? Or the person or the OP's question about performance tuning and configuration recipes, like where would you go to find that stuff? I would go to the docs. As well.
And
go ahead, Diana.
Speaking of, we made a change not too long ago. And here in getting started, come on, you. So, what the hell? Okay, that's fun. So we've got these getting started with Grafana, getting started with Grafana and Prometheus, and getting started with Grafana and MS SQL Server that have been that we have. We're going to have more of those coming, and so that's kind of your, just getting started from zero to something.
Mm-hmm.
And then for the more advanced people, we have a section on best practices, which, by the way, if you guys have best practices out in the community, please add your thoughts on best practices. That would be great. And
Absolutely.
We've got both some just general best practices for creating and managing dashboards, but also observability strategies like the use method and the red method, and some links to other useful items, and some information about the dashboard maturity model. So kind of like to help you figure out where you are in your progression of dashboards and where you might want to be. Oh, and one other update that I forgot to mention, our GTM folks decide to help out by adding links to getting started stuff at the bottom of all of our documentation pages. So you get to see Marcus's smiling face every time.
By the way, that is a great video, I will say.
It is, absolutely.
It's a really great video that Marcus did with a really great companion tutorial that's also in our docs, but following the video and the tutorial, I had a great experience doing that. So if you're looking for like spin up a Grafana setup and just stand it up and play around with it and see how it works like in real time, it's a great little tutorial. So that's why it's on the bottom of every page. Yeah, that's great. That's really, really interesting, Diana. So anybody else have any feedback?
Yeah, I was just gonna add to the discussion of how do you learn Grafana. Obviously, if you search for Grafana on YouTube, for example, there's not a ton of videos from the Grafana team. Is that something that you would like to see more of, or do you feel like you're getting more value from better documentation, or would you like to see something more visual in the form of video content? I know that there are some screencasts that were recorded a while ago, but I'm not sure, Daniel, is it 4.0 or 5.0? They're demoing. Either way, it's pretty dated by now. So
that's hard to remember the difference. That's a long time ago.
It's a really good point, though, Marcus, because I remember at my last company, I worked on the community platform, which was very robust, and we were always getting feedback from all these consultancies about like what kind of educational content developers wanted. Like, do they want video content? Do they want written content? And video content is, I think, a really hard thing, but very dynamic and might work really well might work especially well with Grafana, actually, because it's such a visually oriented tool. It lends itself really well to a visually oriented like medium, like video. So I think that could be super interesting.
But correct me if I'm wrong, that I think one of the reasons that we haven't focused on video content that much is that once you put video content out there, you can't really, improve on it as opposed to documentation. You can put a page out there, and then if someone finds a typo or something that's wrong or want to improve it, they can just update it. Whereas in video, you need to record another video and then republish it. Do you take down the previous one, or it's a lot of work. And creating video content that is, with nice cuts, with audio, and making sure that you have a good recording setup, it is a lot of effort. And I think that we want to make sure that we're doing it well, and we're doing it, it's providing us with value.
So those last videos that Torkel did, he recorded them in our bathroom. So he basically filled it up with pillows and soft things, and like in our like tiny old office that we had, and he was sitting in there recording them.
Yeah, that's the downside of doing webinars. When I've recorded things in the past, I've had a duvet or a bed cover over me with my mic in front of me. Pro tip. But it doesn't work for if you're being videoed.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a really good point. I mean, video is a huge overhead, and it's a nightmare in terms of upkeep. It's like practically impossible to upkeep in the way that you could upkeep docs.
Fun little teaser here. Actually, our CX folk are getting started on, or working on some videos, and they have a really interesting idea for how to put them together in ways that will make them not a total nightmare to update. Basically, they're going to record small segments so that hopefully they'll only need to, update a small segment rather than an entire video if something changes. So not sure what the timeline on those are, but I know that that is in the pipeline.
That is super nifty. I'll be really interested to see how they do that. Okay, anybody else out there have any questions for anybody on the Grafana team, or any additions that I can make to this doc about things that they'd like to see?
So I actually have a question for if there's maybe more experienced Grafana users out there. How I'm kind of curious how you learn Grafana today. Yeah, obviously you've been using Grafana maybe for years. How do you stay updated with new features? How do you make sure that you're still learning Grafana, and how do you how, if you want to take it to the next level, where do you go?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question, Marcus. Does anybody in the audience have any feelings about that?
Hi, everyone. I think we discussed it last time, actually, that I would love to see updates in documentation which happens recently, because documentation always evolving, and you don't know what changed actually in that. I mean, this kind of calls helps, but as talking about this video presentation or small videos, it will be great actually to have some updates video. I mean, you don't need to change it, right? It just updates which happens last month, and it will be great to learn, like 5 minutes video, great to learn for everyone. And regarding the updates, what I do recently, I just look through the pull requests. Like every pull request which is happening, you actually can see the updates in documentation, the way when they happened, right? You see all the new functionality, which is actually a good way to monitor. And I use GitHub Desktop, so you can actually easily go through all the pull requests.
Yeah, quick thing about that. I wasn't necessarily going to mention this because it will ideally be mostly transparent to you folks, but we made a change recently so that we can actually, so previous state is that every time we made a merge from into the docs folder in the master branch, it would go straight into the website. And now we made a change so that by default, it will go into a different folder in the website that is called Next. And you can actually see that if you go to, let me show you real quick. I seem to be the presenter in chief today, and that's fine. So, all right. So up here, come on, you were open just a moment ago. Seriously, is there something going on with my browser? Maybe just, there we go. So latest is the current, and next is, and latest was where everything was going. Next is where it will be sent by default now. But we can also put it in latest, like if we've got a typo or something that's not release specific, then we'll put it into the latest branch. But for things like, especially for the 8.0 documentation that is already starting to get merged, it will go into next. And so that will continue when we, after 8.0 for minor releases and so forth. Patch releases are small enough that we'll still just put those in the release notes.
That's a really, really good point, Diana, for surfacing things that new changes to the docs, which I've been using too. And so, Mikhail, if I could just ask, like, would you be, are you saying that you would be interested in seeing like a short, snappy videos that tour or demo new features as they're coming out?
Well, the
That's
thing
correct.
is,
and because they're going to be short, you can post them anywhere. Twitter.
Right.
Anyway.
Yeah.
And the nice things about that, I've done what's new videos before. The nice thing about those is they never go stale, because what's new in, say, Grafana 7.5 will always be what happened in Grafana 7.5. You don't need to go back and update that ever. Yeah, the hard part for us is when we do something like rewrite the entire manage user section, or rewrite the preferences section, which I did a couple of months ago. And, that doesn't necessarily get caught unless I remember to show up at a community call and call it out. Or just recently, I approved a PR for some information about security when you have anonymous access enabled. And these are small but useful things in the docs that don't necessarily get captured unless you're really looking really closely at the changelog, because they're just small things that we're fixing tons of small things every day. So yeah, I hear what you're saying, Mikhail, and we'll try to at least be aware that aware of the bigger changes and sharing them. So yeah, keep an eye on the hashtag docs channel in public Slack for that sort of thing, because that's where we're likely to announce stuff related to docs anyway.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point, Diana. Oh, go ahead, Mikhail.
Yeah. This is why I like Slack more than Discourse or community channel, because you got notified of what's happening, right? For the community, you have to actually go there. Maybe there is email notification, but again, you have to go to emails and you have already enough of them. So this is why, I prefer Slack. I use Slack most of the time with the different communities. So, but the problem is that I started to reply to and talk to the guys too much than doing actual work.
Right.
Explain different things. It's great because when I explain something or try to answer the question, I learn something myself and experiment with different things. But it takes too much time. I would love someone from Grafana actually take responsibility and start responding, especially in plugins, because there are so many questions.
The plugin ecosystem is a lot, no doubt. What was I going to say?
You're going to sing to us.
Not quite. It's too early for that. Yeah, that's really, really, really interesting, though. Like Twitter short.
I have one more point.
Yeah, please.
Also, what I would love to see more is a life cycle for plugins or dashboards, because you have now a history from version 7, now version 8, right? And as a plugin developer, I'm really interested how you do this lifecycle management. Should you upgrade your plugin? This is the latest. I mean, I think I talked about it before. Should I go to 7.5 or just keep supporting older version, right? And this is the statistics I asked before. I saw that now, but still, in my application plugin, for example, I want to support time series and node graph, right? How I can support both versions at the same time? I don't think that I saw it anywhere as a dashboard management. There is no settings like this dashboard for this version or that version.
Yeah, it's a really tough problem to keep. If you're developing a plugin, to make sure that it's it supports even pre 7.0, and even if you're developing a plugin for 7.0, to keep it running for 7.5 and all the way back. It is a tricky thing, and APIs change, and one option is, of course, to create a release for every minor version of Grafana, but of course that comes with maintenance cost of maintaining all of those versions, and every time you want to fix something, you need to create a hotfix for all the previous versions as well. So of course the nicer thing would be if you have one plugin that is backwards compatible with previous versions. And I will say that we are discussing this heavily internally. This is something that we are very aware of, and even our own enterprise plugin developers are experiencing this. So we hope that we obviously need to write some form of documentation for this and provide some guidance. I don't think there's a clear-cut answer. One thing you could do is check if the actual feature is available. That's what I do for my plugins, where I actually have a little if statement to see if the feature is undefined, basically. But that means that you have a ton of conditionals in your code to check, like is it more than 7.3? Is it 7.4? Is it 7.5? But you're absolutely right that it's something that we need to provide guidance on.
Yeah, I just want to point out, Zhu has his hand raised, their hand raised. Pardon me.
No, I forgot to lower it.
Oh. All right. Well, anybody else have thoughts? I mean, this is the time and the place, and we've got a fairly wide range of people here who can answer a variety of questions, or just take your feedback.
Chime in for a little bit, just to go back to what Mikhail said about kind of Slack versus discourse. I think a lot of the reasons that Diana mentioned up front about why we focus a lot of our attention on discourse being this community built knowledge base is like that findability aspect. That isn't to say like we completely ignore, we as in Grafana Labs ignore our Slack. We try to answer when we can, but as a team, we commit most of our time answering questions on the forums just because we know that has more long-term value to the community. So, I mean, we do know there are some people who prefer that real-time engagement aspect, but, our community is global. Grafana as a team is global. And so sometimes people, things move quickly when there's a 3,000 person Slack channel and you're trying to get help. And so sometimes we just miss things because of bandwidth or how quickly things go. But one of the things Marcus and Matt and a lot of other folks on the community team do, we have dedicated times every week to answer forums questions, just because we know that's going to have value. And so we don't want to discourage people from, like, we want people to one-to-one help each other on Slack, but it's hard when we know somebody has a great response to a question, especially questions that come up a lot, and it just goes into the ether. So that's something we're trying to figure out, like, how can we integrate Slack and discourse a little bit better? just so we don't lose things. Because like Richie mentioned, like, hey, it's against Slack's use policy for us to extract that information in a more programmatic way. So just some things we're thinking of.
Just a quick thing. Sam is our community manager, so she knows of what she speaks. And Richie is both a Prometheus guy and our director of community. So that's where he's coming from. And I don't know if Marcus Olson introduced himself this time, but usually he runs the call. So a lot of you should know him. He's our developer advocate. So sorry, belated introductions all around for the Grafanistas on the call. That
super engaging group this time around. So really,
yeah,
we forget to introduce ourselves sometimes. But yes, I'm Sam, the community manager.
We dove right into it. I love it.
I know. We were so excited.
I know.
We even had an agenda point for this. We did plan this call. We didn't exactly follow the plan, but we, you know,
that one's on me. That one's on me. Mea culpa.
So I also have a question for the group. You know, before the pandemic, did you go to meetups and things where you saw somebody presenting something on Grafana, or conferences? Not hosted by Grafana, but like other meetups. I'm just kind of curious because we're trying to wrap our head around how can we have more beyond just community calls, opportunities for community members to show and tell, and Grafana labs to show demos of new features and teach little things. So we're trying to figure out how can we start doing more of these, but we want to understand is like, is that are meetups a place where you learn at all?
Yeah,
that's definitely something you can learn from everyone. And I mean, in Redis Labs, we had different sessions from time to time when we actually explained the technology. So, and I mean, now with the pandemic, you can actually invite someone who will do the showcase for the community and save it to YouTube. It should be great. And different conferences as well. There are multiple of them about the time series. Be a good one. Actually, I will present my talk about Redis plugins for Grafana on Monday at RedisConf. So if anybody interested, it will be a good talk.
And
can you drop the link? Drop the link in the chat, Miguel.
Yep, sure.
Anybody else have thoughts on meetups, virtual versus in person? No? All right. I'll give it back to Matt then.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. That's a question that I'm very curious about too, because some of the best pieces of learning that I've encountered are recordings from in-person conferences about Prometheus or about Grafana. Like some of the best content that I've engaged in are these video resources, but those video resources were made from like people coming together and congregating at a conference or a meetup. And I don't know if it's just the magic of getting people together, but some of those talks are really, really, really valuable. So it's curious to me to see how that's going to kind of play out in the future in this like COVID and maybe post-COVID moment. Yeah, this has been super valuable for me. Does anybody have anything else on their mind? Otherwise, I think this has been like a really valuable call. We can maybe cut it a few minutes early. Any burning desires, anything, any feedback?
Questions on 8.0 maybe?
Yeah, we know things, and some of it we can even talk about.
So when 8.0 is going to be GA announced on GrafanaCon?
Yes,
on June?
but the beta for 8.0 is currently scheduled for May 20th-ish. Yeah, that is yeah, I say currently scheduled because that is known to change one way or the other.
there is a topic I always ask about application plugins. Is it going to be in 8.0 and in beta? Because now I started to develop a couple of more application plugins and just normal plugins. So I just need to be ready for 8.0. So how I can be ready?
I mean, we will. I mean, we are working on app plugins right now, but mostly it's figuring out what we want to focus on. I mean, we develop several enterprise plugins, and a lot of the stuff that we do for commercial purposes at Grafana Labs is relying heavily on app plugins. So app plugins are here to stay. But we're kind of in a position now where we are thinking hard about where we want to take app plugins. There are several things that we can improve. For example, routing is one of those things that we really want to improve, and I think that is going to have a big impact on how you can write your app. But there are other aspects to app plugins as well. Right now, there's no official documentation on what we're planning to do. I think it's scattered on GitHub for now. There are a few checklists on in GitHub issues. I can try to find them for you, just to give you a heads up of what's coming. But as soon as we feel more comfortable about where we're going with app plugins, we will have documentation. I'm standing ready at my keyboard to start spitting out documentation as soon as we know more.
Yeah. Another question in the chat from Divya. Are there any breaking changes we should be aware of in 8.0? And I don't recall any, but I'm also not an engineer, Matt and Marcus, so I might not have recognized one if I saw it.
I would be the last person. Marcus, are you aware of anything that's really any big gotchas that are coming with Grafana 8? I don't.
Not that I can think of. Most of the stuff is just new features and more, basically, not changing things that much.
Yeah, the closest thing I can think of is that we've made a lot of progress in becoming a React rather than Angular thing. So how did they describe it? That basically Grafana is going to be more of a React app with a few Angular legacy things rather than an Angular kind of a weird mix. So like I say, no one has told me to put anything in the docs yet about, hey, this is going to horribly break stuff, and nothing that I recall from the feature set has that either. Another question, are you able to expand a bit on the panel library functionality that was mentioned on #Grafana earlier today? Yes, that is an 8.0 feature. One of the big themes for Grafana 8 is dashboard management, and one of those things is being able to reuse panels in more than one dashboard. So I kind of think of them like variables, but basically you'd have a panel in one place and be able to stick it into multiple dashboards, but have it centrally managed from one place. And I'm not quite sure what it's going to look like yet, and they're still debating what it exactly should be called, but that's the general idea.
Yeah, and Marcus, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think this is implementing that method is a more performant way than just duplicating entire dashboards or panels.
Yeah, so currently, if you want to reuse panels, I mean, right now it's just copying and pasting unless you're using provisioning, for example, and if you're storing your dashboard definitions in GitHub, for example, then you can automate that a little easier. But hopefully with 8.0, we can make it as a first-class citizen, where we can have a whole library of panels that you've developed and you're very happy with, because if in larger organizations you typically have teams that come up with the same kind of dashboards, and so this is a way of reusing that and letting teams discover already existing panels.
Yeah.
So Divya posted a follow-up question. Panel library, does that mean we can provision / author individual panels rather than an entire dashboard? And if I understand the question right, then yes, and it would be in the UI. I mean, I assume you'd be able to provision it too, but right now the demos I've seen are basically in the UI, you make a panel like normal, and then you can insert that panel into multiple dashboards. Let's say I don't know, a status graph of something that you want to be visible in all dashboards. And then if you made a change to that panel at its central point, then it would change in all of the dashboards where it is embedded. So I hope that answers the question. And then Jamie says, we have a few sets of dashboards where panels are duplicated. Yep, that is exactly the use case. And right now we have to make any changes multiple times and it's prone to human error. We're probably a candidate for provisioning, but haven't made that leap yet. So that would be a really useful feature. Cool, Jamie. Well, when the beta rolls out, I encourage you to get that. And if you have a staging environment, which we recommend that you do, test it out, try it out, and give us feedback because we'll have about a month between the beta and the stable release to make final tweaks. So.
How does it work with the queries, this kind of panels? Is it associated with one query? Because I mean, right now you have these panels, but there is a query, right? And maybe you can use additional panel which will use query from this panel. How does it work? The queries. Also, there is a problem continuous with repeatable panels. So if this panel is repeatable, does it properly work with variables? Was it tested?
I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good question. Mikhail, we need you to bang on this thing and see if you can break it. It sounds like.
Sure.
So, yeah, I don't have an answer for you right now.
All right. Jamie says that they put the beta date on the calendar to try it out. Awesome. And Divya asks, so will that allow data source authors to ship predefined panels along with their data source?
That's a really cool feature. I hadn't thought about that. I really like the sound of that. I don't know about plans to support that specific one, but I'm definitely gonna bring it up because that would be amazing.
I would actually be surprised if the answer was no. One of the big things that is going to be coming under the dashboard management kind of umbrella is what we're calling dashboards as code. So basically trying to make the dashboards a lot more, help me out with the wording here, Marcus, a lot more basically kind of like APIs was how it was explained to me, and they might have just been dumbing that down for the technical writer, but a lot so that you could treat them more directly as repeatable code. And so, I'd be surprised if you couldn't do that with the changes that are coming in 8.0, but I don't know exactly how to do that yet because no one has asked that question yet.
So
the
challenge with dashboard definitions today is that they're huge. It's a massive JSON blob that if you were to fully embrace GitOps and editing this dashboard in GitHub, it would be very difficult. I'm sure people are doing it. I wouldn't want to. Instead, there are ways to generate those dashboard definitions from, for example, using JSONet and similar tools. But coming up in the future, we will provide, explicit schemas for dashboards, and we will also make a lot of these settings in the dashboard definition defaults, so you don't have to define everything yourself. You only define the stuff that you care about. And having formal schemas for dashboards will also enable tooling like linting dashboard, formatting dashboards, is this a accessible dashboard? And you can write a linter that lists, oh, you can't use these colors because they're not accessible, for example. So we see a ton of cool features coming from having a well-defined schema for dashboards.
Yeah, I have to say this is something that I really like about Grafana Labs in general, is like this will towards automation and this will towards treating as much as possible in a sort of code-like fashion, whether it's infrastructure as code and this interest in like Terraform providers and the kind of locking down these kind of configuration issues to just remove complexity and just make things work. And treating docs as code I'm sure we'll have another call about that because there's a lot of interesting things going on there. So I just really love that kind of like spirit that is pervasive across Grafana Labs. And I think I think exactly what Marcus is talking about. It's going to make like a sort of quantum leap in taking care of these things that are becoming sort of unwieldy. Yeah, that's a great question and a great idea for feature. Well, everyone, I think this has been a great call. Anybody have anything else? Otherwise, I think we can wrap it up. I think we're right at time too. Yeah.
Massive thanks to everyone who joined, and massive thanks to Matt for hosting this call.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
you to everybody.
Burning on my heart. More attendees are welcome to speak up. We don't bite. I know it takes some time to warm up and everything, but it's also super rewarding when you allow yourself to speak up and actually participate more actively. No pressure or anything, but feel emboldened. Like you don't have to raise your hand through the feature or anything. Unmute and talk. This is not us having a monologue with each other. This is us actively trying to talk with you and to listen.
Exactly.
Yeah, we want to hear you. This is the community call, not the Grafanistas monologue call. So yeah, this is for you guys. So yes,
One
Sam,
last
who is
thing.
raising her hand.
For attendees, if you would like a Grafana t-shirt for coming to our first community on community call, send me a note on Slack at Sam Corin, and I'll send you a special link for you to pick out a t-shirt as a thank you.
That's amazing. I want a special t-shirt. Gosh. Okay.
I want a t-shirt too. Sam, hook us up.
Richie's got a nice looking blanket and what is that, throw or something back there? Grafana.
Oh, you're talking about
Richie's
scarf.
Oh, scarf. Yeah.
I hear tell that some people have Grafana socks too. I'm so jealous. I want Grafana socks. I've got a Grafana sweatshirt and some stickers, and those are cool. But it's getting to be summer up here in the States, and so I won't be wearing a sweatshirt very much.
Yeah. All right. Very cool. Looking forward to my t-shirt. Thanks everyone for hopping on the call, and we will see you next time. And have a great day. Have a great rest of your day, wherever you are.
Have a good one.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
Yeah.